Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. Folks, this is the last episode you're going to see me until Saturday, February 6th, the annual CLab Conference. We will be wearing masks. We will be socially distanced. We will be checking your temperature. So if you don't feel good, don't come. But folks, I'm very excited to get things going again, see all my good friends from a safe 6-foot distance, but kind of get things somewhat back to normal. If you're interested in the cannabis space, if you're working in the cannabis space, if you're a part of CLab, we definitely want to see you there. You can get more information at joinclab.com. Of course, if you are not comfortable showing up in person, you can attend the conference virtually. Just go to joinclab.com and you can get all your information about that as well too. Folks, I hope you enjoyed our episode yesterday with Brett Puffenbarger. We went pretty deep into the cannabis industry here in Florida, talked a lot about grass attracting snakes. That episode will be live on our YouTube next week at youtube.com/elevateyourgrind. And of course, if you don't want to stare at me, you can always listen to us on our audio platforms on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Elevate Your Grind. All right, folks. My guest today has been a staple of the cannabis industry here in Florida for a while. Again, it is another person that I feel like I somewhat know because I've seen her all over social media. Started following her podcast as well too. We'll get into that a little bit. Has some great reviews on the industry and honestly probably knows a ton more about the Florida industry than I do. You probably know her from social media. If not, I'm sure you've seen her at plenty of the cannabis events around the state of Florida when we were able to do those. So please welcome my guest today, Emma Collard, also known as Emma Greens, and she is the communications director with Doc MJ. Emma, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been dying to get on one of these. You asked me 2 months ago, you're like, hey, you want to be on a podcast? But I'm booked until February. So I've been anxiously waiting to finally have my moment here. And I'm really excited to be a part of this today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, see, and I know you do podcasts too, and you've teamed up with the Couch Lock team, but I got to a point where I had so many people want to come on the show that I was doing 4, 5, 6 of these a week. I had no free time anymore. So I had to get a lot more disciplined with my scheduling. So I appreciate you being patient. We're very happy that you're here. So you've been involved in the Florida cannabis market for a very long time. How long have you been involved? Give us a little bit of your background, getting started, because you've been with Doc MJ the whole time actually too.
Yeah, so I actually started in the Florida cannabis industry 4 years ago. I'm almost up on my 4-year anniversary. It's in April. But I started at Doc MJ when they first opened. Well, they were a couple months in, but I was hired as an intern actually because they didn't have enough money to hire anybody else and they needed some extra help on the marketing side. So they looked for a marketing intern, and out of the applicants who applied, I was the only person who included a cover letter.
Very nice.
Yeah, wild because I feel like that's standard when you apply for a job. But yeah, so I've been with Doc MJ for about 4 years now. I actually took a break after my internship to go into the dispensary side of things, but it wasn't my cup of tea necessarily because when it boils down to it, it is kind of like a retail environment. But I was there for a month and a half and then went back to Doc MJ. So I kind of don't even consider myself gone from there. But yeah, so I've kind of grown up with the Florida industry because this was kind of my first professional job. And, going from intern to communications manager, potentially communications director, it's been a journey. And I've had, the opportunity to interact with all of these amazing companies throughout the state in the past 4 years. And yeah, I mean, I'm addicted to it. I can't get out. I say that if you started in the beginning of Florida cannabis and you're still there, it's only because you have Stockholm syndrome. Right? Because it's like we're here and we're doing the grunt work, and we're everybody, at least at the level that I'm at, is super passionate, which is something that I think kind of sets us aside from a lot of other markets. But yeah, I mean, I can't get enough of it personally.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it's awesome that the timing worked out that you're looking for your first professional job, and our state is launching its medical cannabis program at the time. I mean, obviously, when you were in school, you really couldn't have looked at the program too hard and predicted what was going to happen with it. And the fact that this year, according to the Motley Fool, we were the number 4 market in the country at $1.2 billion with only 450,000 patients, which blows my mind. But was it just to the point where you're getting ready to graduate? Were you just looking for an internship, or was it, I see this internship, I've got to work there because I want to work in cannabis?
So I actually had decided to take the summer semester off. I was a sophomore, and I was like, well, if I'm not going to take classes, I need to do something that's going to be good for my resume. So I got this internship with Doc MJ in cannabis. And, full transparency, I've been smoking cannabis for quite a while, even before it was legalized out here. I think most of us were.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just something that I was super passionate about, something that I knew had a lot of medicinal value, and I wanted to get my hands into it in any way, shape, or form that I could. And, by going for the physician side of things, I realized that I would learn a lot rather than just get, dove into like that weed talk and, THC percentage beliefs and all that stuff. So when I joined Doc MJ, we weren't the largest in the state. We were a startup company, just like everybody else who came in at the beginning. And to be able to scale that to something so large and be able to bring relief to so many patients, we have about a little over 70,000 active patients in the registry right now, which
Wow.
is just under a fifth of the patient base. So it's just, our goal has been to make things as accessible as possible for patients and not charge them an arm and a leg for it. So we offer a payment plan. We have like 25, 27 locations. We keep opening new ones, so I'm not exactly sure. And we have like 50 to 55 doctors under our belt right now. So we're a large network who is really passionate about, making natural relief accessible to the people who actually need it. So it's been awesome.
No, I'm sure it has been, and you guys are going to be a part of the conference on Saturday, and y'all have contributed to CLab, and it's really cool to see these physician groups that are getting really into the medical program here because I'm sure for the longest time, and I remember back when California was medical, right? Way back when everybody made the joke that you just had these pot doctors that you had to make something up and they would just give you a card. So I'm sure, especially you young coming out of school, this being one of your first professional jobs, there's a stigma around the industry already, and there's a stigma around the products. I imagine that you had to deal with a little bit of stigma with a lot of your initial interactions that someone's, oh, you're just working for a pot doctor. They'll just write you a card for anything. When realistically, you're getting probably a deeper and more powerful education than most people ever will. Tell me a little bit what it was like getting started to kind of bring I can't speak, legitimacy to, what Doc MJ was doing.
So when I started as an intern and we were trying to figure out what marketing techniques to go for, one of the women who were on our marketing team, it was just 3 of us, she gave me the advice, and she was like, she came from Colorado, and she said, if you could learn, or if you could do anything that's going to set you aside from anyone in this entire industry, it's going to be to learn the science behind this plant. She's like, because it's so much more than THC. And there's just terpenes and other cannabinoids and flavonoids and stuff that really make this plant extremely special and really beneficial on like a whole nother level that Florida doesn't really understand yet. And if you were to do that, then I really think you're going to have this advantage. And so I took her advice and I started diving into research, and I, started asking questions that a lot of people were embarrassed to ask because, as a patient, I want to know what I'm using and why it's working and how I can use it to its best advantage. And so I started, doing all this research. And then after about a year at Doc MJ, they moved from Clearwater to Dunedin for their HQ. And that was just too far of a jump for me. So instead of going to HQ, they started sending me to their Tampa physician's office. And at that physician's office, there was a doctor at the time who I ended up asking, why do you even work for us? Right? Because he was so anti-marijuana and anti-cannabis that he just kept denying people, or he wouldn't give them THC, or, whatever it would have been. And his response was, well, I don't really understand this stuff, but I think that it has a lot of potential and it's going to do a lot more good than what these prescription medicines are doing and these opioids are doing. And I looked at him and I was like, I'm going to take you under my wing, and I'm going to make you understand this stuff, and I'm going to make you a fan, because there's just so much more to it. And so what I started doing is I started kind of discussing with, what I was researching with him, and asking him questions like, hey, I don't understand this particular terminology, or this doesn't make sense to me, right? I'm reading medical research and I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what this is. So like, can you help explain this to me? And just slowly but surely, he started kind of getting on the path of things. And while that was happening, we were also getting, dispensary reps visiting our offices, because at the time, they were almost like pharmaceutical sales reps. They'd come to the doctors and they'd say, hey, we're this dispensary, this is our products, whatever. But the physician who was in my office didn't want to give them the time of day, right? He was busy, he was seeing patients, you're disturbing him, whatever. And so they would come to me. And so I started asking them questions. And throughout that time, I realized how little our physicians actually know about the plant and the products and how it's helping the patients that they're recommending. So I'm like, we need to do something about this. We are a huge force in this industry. We have so many patients who could be benefiting so much more. And at the time, we were also like trying to analyze how or why patients weren't coming back. Because in the very beginning of Florida marijuana or medical marijuana program, the patient retention rate was horrible. And we realized that, one, it's super expensive. And so we adjusted our cost prices and everything to be more cost friendly. And then the other thing is, people don't know what they're using. And so if you are, the average patient age is 54 years old. And so if you're an old lady and you're using cannabis for the first time, and you walk into a dispensary and you've got this 18-year-old kid who's like, well, we're out of that. We're out of what your doctor recommended. But if you want to get a great night's sleep, I've got this distillate right here, and it's going to get you right. And, grandma, doe-eyed and hopeful, takes this distillate and gets just blasted for 3 days, has a horrible time, and she never wants to use cannabis again. And, as a result, we lose that patient. So it's like, how do we keep these patients? Well, we have to start educating them. We have to get them to understand what they're taking. And so we started rolling out educational patient journals and newsletters, and we started doing more collaborations with the dispensaries to get them to, sponsor events that we were doing, or come speak to our doctors. We do once a year, we have a meeting with all of our doctors to kind of get them retrained and up to date with what's going on, just on a DocMJ basis. And the dispensaries come and they have the opportunity to speak to our physicians and talk about their company and their products and educate them about, the science behind cannabis. So, we've really made it our goal to educate Florida, right? Not just our patients, but the entire patient base. Because if you can understand what this stuff does for you, then it's going to change your life and you're never going to want to not be a patient again. And on that, I've been networking with a lot of people on the West Coast lately. And one thing that they mentioned that they were super proud about Florida for was how much we realize already the value of terpenes, right? Because they said even out there in California, it's 30 years old, their market. They don't even care about terpenes like we do. And so just hearing that made me feel really excited, right? Because that means our education is actually working and it's making a difference in this industry out here in Florida. And it's important. And so it's been my mission, it's DocMJ's mission. And I know it's the mission of quite a lot of people who are involved in this industry. And it separates us personally, in my opinion, than any other market.
Yeah, it's interesting that the industry is kind of responsible for educating the physicians here, and not the other way around for now. Because it's funny, I make this joke all the time. The person who introduced me and educated me on the endocannabinoid system was Eben Britton, a former NFL offensive lineman, right? He was on the show, and it was a conversation we had, and Eben gave me my first deep insight into it. And I've since had doctors on the show, but I talk to these doctors and scientists, and I say, did you learn about this in school? Were you taught this? And no, they've got to find their own education. And I give you a ton of credit for being so insightful that I'm sure like anybody else, you started as just a typical cannabis user. You enjoyed using it. You didn't know exactly the way you were benefiting from it, but you know that you felt better. You know that there were certain things that you benefit from it, but I'm sure that you didn't have that deep seated knowledge that you have now. So as you're going, and as we all do, we talk about, oh, I love this strain, I feel this way and all that. But then you go and you learn the science, and it just kind of like blows your mind. And you realize at that point, like, everybody should know about this, right? And then you start shouting it from the hilltops. I imagine like it's very insightful of you to realize that company wide, if we want to get by, that this is what needs to happen, and bringing that education forth. So congrats on that front.
Thank you. And I mean, okay, so it's not even just the education though, right? It's being able to understand what you're learning about and then being able to translate it into verbiage that anyone from any background can understand. One thing that one of my favorite parts about my job is being able to go to events and network and do things like that, because I am not shy about my cannabis use anymore, because I think everybody should be using cannabis. I think it could improve everybody's life, at least just a little bit. And so, I don't care, or I'm not afraid to ask people, well, why not? Or, well, have you heard this? Or, well, what about this? And if you're able to read someone and understand, maybe their background or their process of thinking, or, just how they tick, right? Then you can understand how to communicate on a level that they're going to feel comfortable and they're going to understand. And so, hearing about the endocannabinoid system and your CB1 and 2 receptors and terpenes being agonists and everything like that, like your average person doesn't understand what that means. So
No.
you have to, one, understand it, but then also be able to translate it into something someone who's cannabis naive and who barely even knows what THC can understand. And it's working. And I think so.
So I want to touch on something too, because you glossed over something very important in my mind. Yes, you were an early cannabis user, and you were an advocate and you were a huge fan of the plant, but you also have a military background and you suffer from PTSD. And I think it's very important, because you're not just someone who has been using cannabis and you saw benefits from it. There is an actual real world application to it. So can you touch on that experience a little bit, and really how you started using cannabis specifically? And I would imagine this was kind of the genesis of your true education, where you're like, okay, cause and effect, right? This is what's going on with me. This is what I used to treat it, and this is the benefit from it. Now it's really starting to make sense for you.
Well, what's crazy is my PTSD is not military related. My PTSD is sexual assault related, and it happened when I was in high school. And that's around the age that I started smoking weed. And I was like a really goody two shoe, and it was like the most lucrative thing I could have ever done in my life, is smoke weed. And so when I would catch myself smoking, daily or twice a day, I would be like, oh my God, I'm turning into a pothead. Like, I need to stop. I need to take a tolerance break. Like, I'm not going to graduate high school, whatever. And so I would take tolerance breaks. And I recognized in high school that when I wasn't using cannabis, my anxiety was out the roof, to the point where I couldn't even drive to school because it happened with someone at my school. And so like, I didn't want to be there. And so I couldn't even get myself to school without using cannabis. And I was 17 at the time. And so then I go into the Army. And I was intel in the Army. I went right after high school because I wanted to do like CIA, FBI work, whatever. And
Went the opposite direction. Got it.
Right. And I mean, I loved it. It was the best, one of the best things I ever did for myself. But while I was in, I got hurt. I messed up my back because I'm only 5'1". I'm a small female, and the equipment is built for your average size male. So just over time, it messed up my lower back and both of my hips. And also, being in that male dominant environment, it really spiked my PTSD symptoms. So it was just like this whole weird, moment of my life. And I ended up getting medically discharged from the Army. I'm 80% disabled through the VA, through all of that. And I took like a year to nanny in France and explore Europe. After that, I had what I called my quarter life crisis. But after that is when I started getting back into cannabis and using it, medicinally. And so, you know, I don't like to showcase that I'm a veteran because I didn't deploy. I wasn't in for a full 20 years, anything like that. And I know people are going to say, well, it doesn't make a difference, but I don't want people to think that I'm riding that coat wave, right? Because I was a veteran and I do have PTSD and I am a cannabis user and I'm not letting, any of that affect me. And I think that, in Florida particularly, we have a very, very strong veteran community in our cannabis world, our cannabis space. There's a lot of veteran centered groups. There's a lot of veteran centered, products, like stuff like that. And I think the love that the cannabis industry out here is showing to the veterans is incredible. It's something that's really beneficial. It's helping so many of them. And to see that we're finally making that transition, because when I first started, we were afraid to even tell VA physicians that cannabis was a thing out here, right? Like, let alone you used it. And now to see the development of our veteran community in Florida cannabis is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you can use that title to help out the veteran community, then I think it's truly beneficial, right? And I like that you're so honest about it too. Um, so I want to point out something else, beyond your job at Doc MJ, you've gone an extra step further. And I hate this term, but I'm going to use it because I don't know what else to call you or myself or anybody else. But you're also a cannabis influencer. And I hate that term. But, you've got a great social media. You review a lot of products. And what led you at that point? Obviously, I'm sure that you had your hands full at Doc MJ. You're immersing yourself in your education. You're networking like a banshee going all over the state. What point do you decide I want to, and we'll say become Emma Greens, if you will, just because I like to think that of as a character, and really build your social media around cannabis education?
So, just naturally, starting in marketing, I helped develop the social media for Doc MJ, and a couple of the dispensaries actually. And, when I was working out of Tampa, I was also doing patient consultations, right? Because I was getting all this background on the products from the dispensaries more than just what strain it is or THC or terpenes, whatever. Like, I've actually had the opportunity to go to quite a lot of the grow facilities here in Florida and be trained on their processes and their extraction facilities and the R&D that they're doing and just all of the products that they have. And I've gotten to try a lot of them because I help guide my physicians into what they can recommend for their patients. And just by realizing that a lot of people just really have no idea the benefits of products that aren't just high THC products, like, the transdermal patches. Those are incredible.
Yeah.
They're a microdose. People say, oh, well, I put that on, I don't get high. Relief, like psychoactive effects, does not equate to relief. And so you can get relief without getting a high. And we all like the high. I love it, but that's not what everybody's looking for,
Yeah.
right? And so to cater to just that market alone is ignorant, and you have to be able to shed light on these products that your normal rec user or your normal influencer wouldn't be talking about. And so I started first, actually, so the Emma Greens thing, that started because of Flowergate. I'm sure you remember that. Basically, at the time I wasn't doing social media anymore, but we needed help because the industry exploded and it was insane. And so I hopped on Facebook, but I had seen how intense the patients on Facebook are. And I didn't want to put my real identity out there. And so just Emma Greens, my last name is Collard Greens. It just meshed, right? So everybody thinks, oh, it's Emma Greens because of cannabis. And it ties in with that. But no, I always tell people, oh yeah, my last name's Collard, like the greens. And so right, it's so cheesy, but
Works out perfectly there.
It does. And that's how I got it. And so I started posting on Facebook, and I realized how beneficial it was to our patients on Facebook. But Zuck, being Zuck, he just got stricter and stricter. And so I started moving to Instagram. And for a while, I didn't want to put myself out there, like on Instagram, right? Like in my real life world, I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, like look at me, I'm talking about weed products, because everybody tells you don't even have a beer in a photo, let alone show yourself marijuana. And so I didn't want to do it at first. And then I think I just woke up one morning and I was like, you know what, like this is really cool and this is really awesome. And I think that if I put it on my platform, then it's something that I can get the conversation with those people who wouldn't normally be open about it to be open about it. And it worked. I've got a nice, really awesome following on my personal page. And then I have my Emma Greens official page, which is all of my products and the education behind that. And what I really like to focus on that page is useful information, right? Like I'm not doing a review, right? It's not like, oh yeah, I tried this strain. It hits really hard. It's awesome. You should check it out, whatever. I'm literally talking about the science and the chemistry and everything like that behind the product and why you should take it and how it could interact with your body and how it can compare to something else. And it's just, we talk about this being in the industry, we talk about these things on a daily basis and it doesn't seem significant to us, but to someone who's not doing what we're doing, it's very valuable information. And so social media has kind of given me that opportunity to spread the information that I believe needs to be spread on my terms, right? Like not going through corporate approval and stuff like that. And, granted, Doc MJ, they don't really do corporate approval or anything like that, but it is still my name. So they're a little bit more relaxed with what goes on. And, it kind of sparked a wildfire. And there are quite a lot of people now on social media who are doing educational or influential posts or, whatever you want to call them. And so it's been kind of a cool movement.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I think a lot of us kind of had that same journey when we decided to really broadcast our love and our passion and our knowledge of the cannabis industry as you have on Instagram. I mean, for me with this show, I took a very similar approach. I mean, if you go back and watch episodes 1 through 10, 15, whatever it is, I become very hesitant when I talk about my own personal use, or I'll gloss over it, or I won't really talk about it that much, when I don't know why. I was literally on my own personal Facebook putting out a half hour to an hour conversation with somebody in the industry about the industry, talking about everything back and forth. And, I remember being at a friend's house and hearing a couple of my friends talk about how hammered they got the weekend before and everything else. And I'm just like, why can't I talk about my use? Why am I being hesitant about it? I already have, I think it was like 20 episodes in. I'm like, I have 20 episodes of a podcast talking about the cannabis industry. Why don't I just really start bringing my personal use into it? And it took me some time to get comfortable with it. So I completely understand where you're coming from, but it's so like liberating once you do it. It's just like, yeah, this is what I do. I'm very proud of it. Like, this is why you should be aware of it. And what I really, like you said, what I really like about your content is you're not just going and trying strain and rolling up a bunch of joints and smoking them. You are bringing the other products that are not that the mainstream cannabis consumer that existed before might be unfamiliar with, right? I saw you're a guest blog for GTI a while back. You bring the tinctures into focus. You bring the capsules into focus, the nano emulsification powders and things like that. The things that are truly what make our Florida market medical. Was that kind of important for you to put a focus on those ancillary products versus just strain reviews or straight flower, which people kind of understand already?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're a medical market, right? And again, our average patient age is 54 years old. And to think that older people, I mean, yes, there are older people who smoke, but to think that cannabis naive patients are going to be comfortable with smoking or vaping is just naive. And you, there are so many good medicinal products that are available in our market that never got light shed on it because it wasn't that typical product. And so, you know, I've been blessed. I've been able to work with quite a few companies besides DocMJ to do blog work and to do stuff with product spotlights and stuff like that. And I just think it's really important, you know, like, so basically I was given the opportunity because I was like everybody else. I only vaped. I only wanted to use flour, and, you know, back then it was the vape cups, but same, you know.
Just for a heads up, I'm still like that. I like everything else, but I'm still like that.
Well, no, I mean, and I do too. I mean, the majority of the cannabis that I consume is through an inhalation method. I can't break that stoner habit. It's not a stoner habit, but that like classic, like I love the breaking up and rolling and that whole thing. But, you know, I was presented, Move. They let me try one of their patches for free. And that was a product that I would have never have tried before, right? Like, again, why would I want a patch? I had a high tolerance. It didn't make sense to me. And, but whatever, I got it for free and I had the opportunity to try it and it was incredible. And the same thing with their inhaler. Like that inhaler is awesome. Like I used to keep it by my bedside table and hit it, and it was like a cup of coffee. Like it just got me out of bed. It got me feeling good. I wasn't high, but my pain went away. I was a little more energized. And I realized that these products bring benefits, and people don't know about it because they're stuck in their ways of just smoking or just vaping. And, you know, when it comes to cannabis as medicine, smoking and vaping, it hits you one of the quickest ways, but it doesn't stay in your system. And so if you want that consistent relief, then you have to, you don't have to, but in a convenient manner, you have to try out other products because they last longer, you know? And so this is like so crazy, and it's whatever, I'm going to put it out there. One of my favorite products that are available to medical patients here in Florida are the suppositories. And listen, I'm going to be honest. When I tried a suppository for the first time, I'm staring at this thing like, what has my job brought me to? Like, am I really about to try this right now? Like, what? But with that being said, your gut has more CB1 and CB2 receptors than your brain does. And that's a very like porous area, and it's very, you know, it's got a great absorption rate, everything like that. And it gets right to your bloodstream. And it is one of the most effective ways of using medical cannabis. And it was the best CBD experience I've ever had in my life. And I push them on everyone because Crohn's disease, PMDD, endometriitis, you know, there's so many different medical conditions that benefit so much from a suppository route, but like nobody wants to talk about it, right? Because it's a suppository. But just stories like that even could help just one person. And somebody has to be open about this. Somebody has to feel comfortable talking about products like this or their experiences, because you have to be able to relate to these people, these patients, because they want to feel that. They want to feel that connection. You have to play with their ethos, and you have to develop a friendship with them, because this is scary to them. And when you're scared, you're not going to ask questions, and you're not going to think clearly, and you're not going to remember anything. I could sit there and have an hour-long conversation with someone. They wouldn't ask me any questions, and they'd walk out and they're going to forget everything I just said. Right. And so you've got to be able to be open and honest about your own personal experiences, because that's how someone else is going to relate, and they're going to click in their head, oh, I get it now. You know what I mean?
No, it makes total sense, and you're 100% right. You know, if nobody's out there trying these other products, then there isn't an education out there, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that are afraid to ask questions, or they might be asking questions to a friend who might just be your traditional cannabis consumer. It's just gonna be like, no, just smoke this, you're gonna be fine. When realistically, that's not the best method of consumption for them. So that's why I look at the content that you're putting out there. And honestly, I get a lot of my education and I'll keep calling them ancillary products, right? Or newer style products from you putting it out there, because there aren't too many people in Florida that are going through those other products. You look at the message boards on Reddit or anywhere else. Not that I'm on Reddit that much because everyone's so freaking angry and all they do is complain. But I people are just talking about strains, and they're bitching about strains, and they're bitching about every single store and everything else. So to see someone who's really putting that positive vibe out here for the medical community is great. Now, you've even gone beyond just your own page now, and you've linked up with Couchlock News, and you seem to be all over there now. So how did that happen? Was it just that episode 10 they brought you on and never let you go?
Oh my God, shout out that you recognize what episode number it was, because I couldn't even tell you what episode number I was.
I do my due diligence before the show, so I happened to watch it about 2 hours ago.
Nice. So you're fresh with the material. I love it. No, so being in my position in the industry, I've gotten quite a lot of opportunity to be on a platform or create my own platform or whatever it may be. And nobody's intentions were ever really pure. And that's just the name of the game for being a young female in this industry. It happens. Everybody wants to ride the wave. Everybody wants to whatever. So Couchlock reached out to me, and I looked at their page, and they were college kids and they seemed like they had good intentions. And I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll do a podcast with you guys. It was like the beginning of quarantine maybe. And I was bored, and I was like, sure, let's do it. And we had a great conversation. And I realized that with a little bit of guidance, they could really do something beneficial for this industry. And before I got on Couchlock, I was very PC whenever I talked about anything. I made sure that, I defended all of the dispensaries no matter what happened, and said, give them the benefit of the doubt, we're new, whatever. And Couchlock kind of presented me with this opportunity of, well, we have questions about these PC answers, or we want to know a little bit more. Like, it's not fair. They're talking about what they think is relevant, but they're not listening to what we want to hear. And so after our podcast stopped recording, I stayed on the Zoom meeting, and we just I kind of did like a fast track of the cannabis industry on how everything goes down here and what happens. And I'm just like, listen, like, I don't have the ability to produce my own show. Like, I could do it, right? But I don't have the time. I'm doing way too much. And there's so many things that I would love to talk about and put out there and everything like that. But it's just unrealistic for me. But what I can do is I can kind of help guide you guys in the right direction to accomplish these things and to do these things that the average person isn't doing. So one thing that I love about Couchlock is they open up questions to Reddit right before they interview someone on a podcast. And you mentioned Reddit is savage, and I mean but I get it, right? I mean, they're just unfiltered, and they're tired of being taken advantage of as patients, and I understand that. I recognize where they're coming from, but it's just Couchlock, they're actually getting questions that the patients are curious about. And then they're asking these people. And so, they're doing good. And I've kind of helped also kind of bridge that, are we rec or are we a medicinal podcast, right? And I'm like, well, you can cater to both markets, right? Do a very relatable episode or review or whatever, but also throw in some science and throw in some knowledge and get things, because just because you're medical doesn't mean you have to be, sitting up straight and straight to the T on everything. You can be relatable. Like, I'm a medical patient. I'm a relatable person. You know what I mean? So The couch lock journey, it's been awesome. I love those kids. They've got great intentions. They've got a good head on their shoulders. I've been getting more involved with them because it's fun. I love being around them, and I've kind of, I made a choice that 2021, I'm going to be honest. I have a lot of people who, and I'm not saying I wasn't honest in the past. I want to put that out there. Like, I was honest in the past. And if you go back and read some of my, Instagram posts, you can tell when I'm not like the biggest fan of the product or stuff. I don't blast them. I'm not disrespectful. I don't do anything like that, but you can kind of read in between the lines. But with this YouTube channel with Couch Lock, I'm being more transparent. I'm being more honest. And, it's just, patients are paying a lot of money for these products, and they should be getting good quality products. And I don't care anymore to piss off one of these dispensaries, because they shouldn't be taking advantage of patients like this. And one of the things that encouraged me to do it is I was working on a project with one of the dispensaries, and they had just released a new product or two new products. And they asked me my feedback because I hadn't put it on Instagram yet. And I was just kind of like, well, like, to be honest, this has been a very difficult post for me to make, because I don't really know what this is, but it's not what you're saying it is, right? And their marketing team encouraged me to post about it. They said, no, you need to post about it. You need to call us out, because the people who are making it are going to keep making it this way, right? Like, you have to be, hey, this shatter should not be cloudy, right? Like, it looks like dirty shatter. For the first time in my life, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to bake with shatter. I'm going to have to figure this out now. Like, I'm not going to smoke that. And, that was a dispensary encouraging me to do that. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, if this company can tell me to go ahead and call them out on social media, I'm going to do it for everybody else. Why not?
That's really interesting. I mean, I give you credit. I try to focus very much on the business and the industry from a high level. And, I'll shit on people on that level. I don't go down into the weeds of the products and everything else. And, I'm glad that you guys do. And I'll tell you what, I'll be the first one to admit it. When Couch Lock launched, I watched their launch. They had Brady Cobb in one of the episodes. Brady is a friend. Brady was my first episode I ever did for Elevate Your Grind. He's our first repeat guest. So, of course, I judged the shit out of those guys. And I'm like, great. They got this stupid stoner podcast. They got Cobb on. Luckily, I mean, you guys actually drove more traffic to my interview, so I was very happy about that. But I judged the crap out of them. And then I started watching some more of the interviews as it went on. And then after you joined them, and I'm like, all right, I was wrong. These kids know what they're doing. They do have good intentions. They're young. They're going to figure it out. And, I actually reached out to them on Instagram to do something together. I just haven't followed up on it. But I think what you guys are doing is great. And I think as far as a patient-focused show and a product-focused show, you're doing great. And I mean, they do a great job editing and adding in the sound effects and everything else. If you look at what we do, it's literally one take, beginning to end, just a conversation. I'm like jealous of the production quality. So I commend you guys all on that.
Thank you. Well, that's something that, it's important. In order to get recognition, you have to have something that's good quality, right? Even if it's good information and it's not a good quality video, someone's not going to watch it. And I've seen that. That model has just failed over and over again in this market. I feel like, with people who have really informational stuff to put out, but the quality of it just isn't quite there. And so, the Couch Lock kids, they're a team of 3 people. One of their group members is strictly only editing. He's all behind the scenes. He doesn't do anything on camera. And he's up day and night editing the videos. And I feel so bad.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah. And poor guy, like, half the time, like, I will create like so many takes, and then I'll just be like, well, I'm busy, I can't go through it, so I'm going to dump them all and you can go through it. And I mean, they hate me for that, but I'm getting better. But yeah, they've got great intentions, and I saw that. And, I think that they've got a big year ahead of them, in my opinion. Like, I think 2021 is going to be a really good year for Couch Lock. And just a big year for growth in this industry in general. I've gotten a lot of insight in the past few weeks about, collaborations with brands and changes in processes, and making sure that, things aren't, messing up the way that they are, and coming out and being sold to patients when they shouldn't be selling to patients and stuff like that. And so personally, a lot of people don't realize that we are only 4 years into this industry, right? And while we could take a blueprint from someone else, we have a completely different structure here. We have that vertical integration and very minimal licenses. So, I like to say it, I might get in trouble for saying this, but I call it a cannabis cartel down here. Just the way that it's set up. And
Yeah.
It's just, we had a lot of speed bumps in the beginning, and we're working them out, and with time everything's going to get better. And people really shit on this program, and I get it. As a patient, it's super frustrating to be able to go to California or Colorado and get incredible product for $50 a gram when you would be paying $100 a gram out here. And so I'm not saying what they're doing is justified, but we are still a new market, and there's been a lot of growth in the very few years that we've been open. California and Colorado, they've been operating for years, and we haven't been. And yeah, we didn't start off with flower or edibles, but we have them now. And we're, figuring out the kinks of growing in Florida, because that was something that nobody was prepared for, or transporting products throughout the state. Like, that's a whole nother game as well. And so these companies are finally working out the kinks and figuring out how to fine tune a lot of stuff. And so 2020, a lot of people should be excited about it, in my opinion, because I really am.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like you said, it's frustrating the medical program we have now. But you know what else is frustrating? Texting my guy and having to go to his parents' house when I was a fully functioning adult, when living in my own house, and sitting in some kid's house because I needed to get product. Or the second person that I used to go to would have her kids and grandfather in the house too. And I'd just be sitting there all awkwardly. That was frustrating also. So the fact that we can go into a dispensary, pay with, pay, get a receipt, have real product and everything else is nice. Yes, it is frustrating, but unfortunately, people who rely on the government to be proactive about anything, I mean, have you been to the DMV, right? So, that's exactly the people that we're dealing with that are putting together our market. But like you said, as we go on day by day, it gets better. The strains are getting better. The quality's getting better. The variety of products getting better. And I fully agree. And I think you feel the same way. If we can break up the need or the requirement for vertical integration, and we can issue more than the 22 licenses that have been issued, that Florida can be the second, if not maybe the first largest market in the country. I mean, 450,000 people did $1.2 billion. Our state, again, I probably should have looked this up before, is somewhere between 30 and 35 million people in our state. There's no reason why we can't touch California.
Yeah, we only have it's like 1 to 3% of the population are patients, and over 70 something of them voted, right? So we're going to be huge. Florida is going to be a game changer. I mentioned earlier, I think before the podcast, I'm on Clubhouse, which is this new app. And Clubhouse has a lot of people in the cannabis industry from the entire United States on it. And everybody is super curious about the way Florida's working. People in California are, asking me questions about the Florida market. Like, everybody's dying to get in here. But then I'm like, well, do you have $30 to $50 million right now? Because that's what it's going to take. And another thing is, a lot of our dispensaries, they have people who are working in legislation as lobbyists to make sure things are going their way. And, I'm hopeful for vertical integration, but I don't think it's going to be soon.
Yeah. I don't know. I get the feeling that if we can get rec on the ballot in 2022, there's no way it doesn't pass. Just given the way that the rest of the country
ballot. It's the right initiative. The thing is though, I don't want a bad initiative getting passed just because it's rec.
That
right?
makes sense.
And I think that's what a lot of people are focusing on is they want adult use, right? Which I do too. I mean, as a patient and a person in this industry, adult use is going to make my life pop off. But why would I want it if the bill's not worth it?
I
Right? Like,
mean, as a Floridian, I want adult use because let's be honest, if we look at it from an economic standpoint, our state, although we stayed open for most of the pandemic, I mean, there's going to be a deficit in the budget. And, the state, as controversial as this might be, could use the income. It could use the income from adult use, right? But like you said, and this is what I talk about all the time with national legalization, is I don't want that yet because that scares the shit out of
oh,
me of
yeah.
how they're going to put it together. So you're right. I mean, when we say if we can get rec on the ballot, I'd hope the groups like Normal and everything else can get the signatures to get the right initiatives on the ballot. So, we'll see what happens, but we are getting pretty late in the night here. I've taken up a lot of your time. I'm sure you've got 107 takes you have to do for couch locks. I'm joking. See Evan, see how good you have it. You get one take. That's all you have to edit. You don't have to edit all my takes. But Emma, looking at 2021 and everything that you're involved in, what are some of the things that you're really excited about to work on or approach this year that you're allowed to share?
So I'm really excited about some new brands that are going to be entering the market. There are some really big ones that I know a lot of people are fans of. I'm also excited in the development of the edible or the edible products because more and more dispensaries are finally going to be able to put that out there. But I'm also just kind of excited to see more growth, right? Like we're finally becoming more of a sustainable industry, and 2020 put everybody on the back burner for a second, and the tone that I've seen so far in 2021 has been everybody is just ready to go out there and get it. And I think that I don't know, like I'm always excited about anything this industry is going to do because it's all new and it's all going to be innovative and it's all going to be something to perk people up. And it's cannabis. You can't be not excited about cannabis.
Yeah. Well, are the Couch Lock guys going to come down to the conference with you on Saturday? You should probably drag them.
I don't know. I have some other business to do while I'm down south. I'm gonna I'll probably mention that you asked and see what they're doing. They are college kids and the semester started already, so I'm not sure if they'll have that availability or not.
Nobody goes to class. That's unfair. I never
I know, but they do
class.
homework, and they've got like girlfriends and stuff, and they're busy. Plus, okay, the
I got a wife and a kid.
Blue River launches tomorrow as well. So they're going to be busy with that because I'm picking that up first thing in the morning to get a review on that, which I'm super excited about. I can't wait.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Well,
but
listen, I would like to do something with you guys, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. But I'm excited to see what you all do this year. I'm glad that you joined that team. I'm excited to continue to learn from you on social media and everything else. And, hopefully I'll see you Saturday. Thank you so much for doing this.
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It was a blast.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely do it again. Hopefully, we'll do it in person sometime. And thank you. And thank you, everybody at home. This has been an awesome time. This is our last episode for the week. Don't forget, Saturday, join CLab.com, Sacred Space, Miami. February 6th is the date. Masked, temperature checks, social distance. It's going to be a great time. We're going to do it safe. We're going to make sure you feel safe. Come out and check it out. The annual CLab Conference. We want to see you there. Folks, this has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. If you missed any part of this episode, you can catch it next week on our YouTube page at youtube.com/elevate your grind. We'll be live again with you on Tuesday at 7 p.m. right here at facebook.com/Cannabis Group. See you next week, folks.